College football is back, and we're back on the big mountain with a very special guest.
Hey, it's great to have you here on the mountain. I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. And as you can all see, we have a guest with us, Steven Vitte. He is going to go over a MAC preview, go through every team. He's going to tell us who he thinks is going to be in the MAC championship game. This will be our first conference preview that we're doing, and we are not MAC guys. For those of you that know, I'm the Mountain West guy. Steve's the Big Ten guy, and Steven has been with us almost from the very beginning of this channel that we've done here, and so we wanted to get him on to do a MAC preview because we both love, all three of us love G5 football. It doesn't get enough love. So with that, Steven, we'll let you introduce yourself and let you have at it here. We want to hear about the MAC.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Steven Vitte, and just recently, within the last year or so, I started a series on my channel called STV Castle, with that series being called Bobcat Corner, where I talk about college football-related topics. Of course, the Ohio Bobcats, my hometown area team, but also just college football topics in general. And I do like talking about college football topics in general because it really affects every single team in the country. So with that said, here we're just going to have a MAC preview, and I'm just gonna run down through a list of the teams in the MAC conference, just by departures, key departures, and key returns for players and their head coaches and the stats, just the basic stuff.
Sounds good. I am ready. I think you said you wanted to start with the champ, or who you think will be in the championship game. Is that correct?
Right.
Awesome.
We're just gonna start right off the bat at the very top with the who I believe will be the top two teams finishing at the top to face each other at the MAC championship game on Ford Field in Detroit, Michigan. I've said it before on Bobcat Corner, these two teams, and they would be undoubtedly Miami of Ohio and Toledo. I've been saying this for a while now, that they've been 1 and 1A when it comes to MAC play. And when you look at those two teams in general, let's just start off right now with Miami of Ohio, specifically that. Okay, so Miami of Ohio, returning head coach is Chuck Martin. He's entering his 9th year as head coach of the Miami Ohio Redhawks, and yes, just like with any other G5 school, Miami of Ohio, they have lost some talent to the transfer portal or just graduation, or they've moved on to the NFL or professionally. So returning quarterback for Miami of Ohio is Brett Gabbert. He is he's a good statistically, completed 111 of 187 passes for 1,634 yards for 14 touchdowns and threw only 5 picks last year. And also returning is from the defensive side of the ball, Brian Ugwu, defensive lineman Brian Ugwu, 59 tackles, 8 sacks, and also linebacker Matt Solopek, 114 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 interception last year. So obviously, when you look at that, players like that on Miami, they obviously have a talented roster. And from what I've seen last year with Miami of Ohio, they obviously have that depth. They have that identity. They know what they have to do for any given play. And I expect that to continue with Miami of Ohio. So, yeah. And also continuing to Toledo, Ohio. The Toledo Rockets, they were very impressive. They just pretty much steamrolled throughout the regular season last year with head coach Jason Candle, who I consider to be a potential head coaching candidate in the future for a power conference school. I just see that in Jason Candle from what I've heard about him in the interviews that he's had. He's just that kind of guy for a head coach, players coach. And for Toledo, let's check out stats here. Toledo. Yeah, they have returning running back Jaquez Stewart. He had 100 rushing attempts for 475 yards and 5 touchdowns. So last year. And yes, they do have, as far as the quarterback play goes, they do have DeQuan Finn. He transferred out, so they're not having him back this year. But they are having Tucker Gleason step in as the new quarterback for Toledo. But I expect him to be just fine under center. They have good depth up front with the offensive line. So I just expect Toledo to just pick up where they left off last year.
Hey, Steven, I got a couple quick questions on both of those teams for you. We don't have to take too long.
Sorry.
Miami of Ohio. So I've heard national correspondents, national guys talk about Miami as, a potential G5 team that could, potentially be ranked, maybe to start the season or move into the rankings pretty quickly, because there's just a large consensus across the board that they're the top team in the MAC. And I've also heard some people suggest that they could possibly compete for that CFP spot. So just real quick, do you have any thoughts on that of Miami, Ohio? Do you think, obviously you're saying that you think they'll be in the championship game for the MAC, but do you see them reaching that level of possibly being a top 25 team, or maybe even competing for that G5 CFP spot?
Well, I've gone back and forth between Miami of Ohio and Toledo. I just went back and forth like all off season long, just comparing the roster and comparing what they've been doing with the transfer portal. And I definitely see Miami of Ohio as a contender, no doubt about it. But there was just something that swayed me towards Toledo being more prepared for that kind of spotlight. And once again, Jason Candle, really top-notch kind of head coach. I think he'll get his players ready to play. I mean, of course, Chuck Martin will get his players ready to play, but I just think Toledo has all around as a roster, they have enough talent to get the job done. 1 and 1A, as I said before. If I had to choose one of them to possibly represent the MAC as the G5 representative of in the college football playoff, I would have to go Toledo, to be honest with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you, and so I'll just still throw it out there. Maybe you can make it just another quick comment. I've heard people suggest we're going to talk about your Ohio Bobcats. They lost a lot in the transfer portal, especially after the spring practices. But I've heard some people say they were worried about Toledo losing some people. I think you said Toledo lost their starting quarterback from last year. So if you could just give us your overall, obviously you have a lot of confidence, especially in their coach. Do you, other than losing their quarterback, should we not be too worried about the, other players that they've lost in the transfer?
No, I don't think we should be all that worried about Toledo. I think they have a solid foundation in place. They have that identity in place. They know what they want to do. And it's not just Jason Candle, it's the entire coaching staff in general. They have that foundation in place where they expect their players to just go out there and just get the job done. They've been doing it for many years now. So Toledo has been one of those teams that's been really up there on the peak of the mountain, so to speak, for the MAC. So I don't expect that to change.
Good stuff. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Where are we going to next, sir?
Okay. Well, speaking of the Ohio Bobcats, I might as well go there. It's hard for me to judge the Ohio Bobcats exactly, to be honest with you, because as you've noted, they've lost a lot of players to the transfer portal. I've lost count about how many players they've lost to the transfer portal. Last time I checked, it was like around 30-ish players they've lost to the transfer portal. But with that said, they brought back some players that are, still talented enough to start. They have that sense of what they want to do. They know their roles. And obviously, just as a fan, I trust the head coach, Tim Albin. He's entering his 4th year as Ohio Bobcats head coach. He has that foundation in place. He knows what he expects out of his players, what to do. And if I go through real quick, such as the starting quarterback going into 2024 for the Ohio Bobcats, his name is Parker Navarro. it's going to be Parker Navarro. You may have heard of him from the Myrtle Beach Bowl, where he had a great game against the Georgia Southern Eagles. And yeah, from what I've seen from Parker Navarro, he's very mobile. He's very quick on his feet. He knows how to get out of trouble whenever he sees it on the field. So when you have that as your starting quarterback, you have a chance to make some plays. You have a chance to hang in there in games.
Yeah, he was impressive. You got to think Ohio's a top five, right there in that probably fifth, sixth area. Still a strong team, even with some of the losses.
I have complete confidence in him that he'll be able to manage things for the Ohio Bobcats on offense. And yeah, it was for a time there a quarterback duel between him and CJ Harris throughout the offseason. They were just competing for that QB1 job. And then all of a sudden in late April, CJ Harris, he decided that he wanted to enter the transfer portal. So he went to the University of Cal to be with the California Golden Bears to play for them. And from there, it's just been Parker Navarro for the Bobcats. So yeah.
So real quick question there. So obviously losing Rourke was, that's a big thing. He was was really great. Yes. I mean, obviously losing him is a big deal. However, if I remember correctly, he was hurt quite a bit. I think he got hurt in that San Diego State game to start the year and missed some other time throughout the season. So I'm assuming that was it Navarro who basically got those reps and got that time when he was out last year.
Yeah, there was a time when Curtis Rourke, he went down with an injury, and the Bobcats just decided to plug in new quarterbacks, with them being guys like CJ Harris and then Parker Navarro. And as you saw, Parker Navarro, he finished things off in a good way for the Bobcats last year. So yeah, I just think he will pick up where he left off last year for the most part. I'm just speaking individually as quarterback.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So where do you want to go next, sir?
Okay. So yeah, let's just let's go to okay, Bowling Green. Let's go to Bowling Green.
Okay.
Bowling Green Falcons. Yeah, they have some good returning players such as quarterback Connor Bezadek. Hope I'm saying that last name right. He completed 168 of 278 passes for 1935 yards and 12 touchdowns, throwing 7 interceptions. And also running back Terrion Stewart, he's coming back to the Bowling Green Falcons. 125 rushing attempts for 762 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's just on offense for Bowling Green. And defense, they're returning linebacker Joseph Sipp Jr. He had 73 tackles, 38 of them being solos, 3.5 tackles for loss. And also defensive lineman Dontrez Brown, 36 tackles with 23 of them being solos, 3 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, and 2 fumble recoveries. So that's the kind of productivity they're getting back on defense.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like they're going to be a pretty solid team, I think, in the MAC this year.
Yeah. So also with key departures for Bowling Green, they've lost running back Teron Keith. He was like a dual threat in the backfield for Bowling Green. 44 receptions for 4 to 57 yards and 3 touchdowns, but also on the ground, he had 66 rushing attempts for 390 yards and 4 touchdowns. And they're also losing wide receiver Odu Hiliare. Hope I'm saying that right. Hiliare. 45 receptions, 532 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So they're losing that either to the transfer portal, graduation, or NFL. So, and also on defense, they're losing linebacker Darren Anders, who had 85 tackles last year, 43 of them solos, 10.5 tackles for losses, 4.5 sacks, 2 pass deflections, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. So, I mean, you keep some talent, but you lose some talent, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of the way of the world here, it seems like, for just about every team. So
Yep. So, moving on here, we're going to go to Ball State Cardinals.
yep.
So, they've been one of those middle of the pack teams for a while now in the MAC. Ball State, you can't get a good read on them. It's like either or. They're like take one step forward this year or one step back the next year. Ball State's been kind of that kind of team. So they're getting back in return. They're getting back cornerback on defense, Tylen Baldwin. He had 30 tackles, 25 of them solos, 5 pass deflections, and 1 fumble recovery last year. And on offense, they're getting back Kyle Kelly. He completed 66 of 124 passes for 577 yards for 2 touchdowns, throwing 3 interceptions. And yeah, on the ground, he was a good dual threat too. As a quarterback, he could run. Kyle Kelly, 135 rushing attempts for 724 yards and 7 touchdowns. So when you have a quarterback that does that, you're still in a good spot for that, productivity wise.
Yep.
And let's see. Yeah, also coming back for Ball State would be running back Vaughn Pemberton. Yeah, 23 rushing attempts for 139 yards, 1 touchdown. And, you know, he's one of those guys where, yeah, he didn't see that much playing time on the field, but as he is returning, you would expect those numbers to go up going forward. So that's basically it for Ball State as far as returns go. And yeah, they lose productivity. They lose a running back as well in Marquez Cooper. You know, he had 1,000 yards rushing for 4 touchdowns, and also losing tight end Brady Hunt, who didn't see much action last year, but in 2022 he did very well. Let's see, 46 receptions for 98 yards, 5 touchdowns. That was in 2022 for Brady Hunt, but last year he didn't see much, but he's transferred out. So Ball State will not be having that. So you can see the theme here of, you know, G5 teams gaining talent, keeping talent, or losing talent.
Yep.
There. Okay, moving right along here, we're going to go to Akron, the Akron Zips. Now, once again, I have them as like a middle of the pack kind of team in the MAC. Just a team that's been struggling to find its identity in comparison, and they've just had, you know, such turnover, such, you know, talent, you know, coming and going, and it's just been tough. It's been tough for a team like Akron to recruit talent. So, see here. Okay, for Akron, they've had to move on from a couple quarterbacks such as Jeff Undercuffler. He's no longer going to be playing for Akron this year. And then they have like also leaving Akron would be defensive back / linebacker Corey Thomas Jr. He had 47 tackles and 25 of them solos. And yeah, certain productivity that they've lost there for both offense and defense. And particularly for the defense, returning would be linebacker Shaman Cooper. Last year, he had 44 tackles, 17 of them solos, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. And defensive back Tyson Durant, he's coming back too. 33 tackles, 20 of them solos, 1 tackle for loss, 1 interception, and 1 pass deflection. And also on offense, the Zips, Akron, they're getting back some productivity, like wide receivers, Alex Adams and Bobby Golden. They're coming back with Adams, 22 receptions for 188 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. And Golden, he had 17 receptions for 144 yards. And it's not like they have a completely empty cupboard, so to speak, of talent. They have some talent, Akron, but they just need to find their way, through their, ongoing issues.
A quick question on Akron, just a
Yes.
quick follow-up. So
Yes.
Joe Moorhead, still the coach there, correct?
Yes, he is.
Okay. So Joe Moorhead had so much offensive success. He goes to Penn State, takes them, almost to the playoff. They win the Big Ten, they beat Ohio State. He gets the head coaching job at Mississippi State, still good offense, but maybe wasn't the right place for him. Goes to Oregon, more offensive success out there. Why do you think, is it just a matter of talent at Akron? What's the issue with the offense there? Why can't they get an offense, at least get an offense going and keep that going? That's what he's known for.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I have seen Akron play last couple years, and I guess if I can make just one observation is just that it doesn't seem, just as a fan, it doesn't seem to be as creative as one would think. Like when you're making formations, you're trying to make like bunches, like bunch formations of trips, wide receivers on one side. You don't see much of that for a team like Akron. And there are probably reasons for that because the talent and things like that. But I don't know. I think it has to be part of a recruiting issue for Akron that they can't seem to get the right kind of talent.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So that it could make Joe Moorhead's offense go.
All right. Well, I think you're halfway, Steven. So where are we headed? Where are we headed next?
Okay. I think we're going to go to a certain team where this university, when I picked them in our mock draft together, when we had Bill, that college football guy, I chose Buffalo. And needless to say, if you read the comments, I got a lot of heat for that pick. So, hey, it is what it is. And, I kind of make a joke of it saying, you can make a t-shirt, just sell, I chose Buffalo and they ain't no bull. So yeah, just a little joke there. But anyway, Buffalo, as far as the team goes, to be serious, Buffalo, they have a new head coach. His name is Pete Lembo. He is formerly from the University of South Carolina. He was the Gamecocks' associate head coach / special teams coordinator. And he was recently named new head coach of the Buffalo Bulls. So he's taken over for them. And he has been a head coach before in previous years. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to mold the Bulls into what he wants on offense. And also for Buffalo, returning players are offensive players such as running back Ron Cook Jr., dual threat, 29 receptions for 220 yards, 1 touchdown, and also on the ground, 148 rushing attempts for 609 yards and 6 touchdowns. And also they're bringing back wide receiver Marlon Johnson, 40 receptions, 494 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And let me see. They're not bringing them back. Excuse me. I want to make a correction there. Okay. Because I have it like coded in purple and red here. Yeah. Ron Cook Jr. and Marlon Johnson, they are leaving Buffalo. That's from last year's productivity. They're not coming back to Buffalo. What they are bringing back is running back Jaquez Barksdale, 52 rushing attempts for 248 yards for 2 touchdowns. And who is coming back on defense would be linebacker Khalil Murdoch, 60 tackles, 36 solos, 9.5 tackles for losses, 2.5 sacks, 2 sacks. And 4 forced fumbles.
Great.
So yeah.
All right, where are we headed next?
Okay, we're headed to Northern Illinois, the Huskies.
Yeah.
So now I'm more optimistic about Northern Illinois because they've had solid play from the quarterback position, although they are losing Rocky Lombardi, who's been there for a long time. He was fun to watch. I remember watching him play for a few years, and he would bring the Huskies back from big deficits in games. So I remember that vividly. So they're losing Rocky Lombardi. They're losing quite a bit of depth on the offensive line from what I've seen. And also they're losing talent on defense, such as defensive lineman James Esther. He's going to the NFL. So in 2023, he had 49 tackles, 23 of them solos, 6.5 tackles for losses, and 4 sacks. So who is returning to Northern Illinois this year would be quarterback Ethan Hampton, who, judging by reports, he's going to be QB1 for Northern Illinois unless something else happens between now and beginning of the season. And also returning to Northern Illinois is running back Antario Brown. The stats I looked up on this guy were really amazing. It was just 212 rushing attempts for 1,296 yards, 10 touchdowns, and right there with him is Gavin Williams, 95 rushing attempts for 488 yards and 3 touchdowns. Basically, for Northern Illinois, they have such a great rushing attack. They know what they have in their running back room. So that's why I consider Northern Illinois to still make some noise in the MAC. Yeah.
Yeah, they're a solid team. They seem to have been a solid team here for quite a while. So
Sounds like they have some good upside if they
Yeah.
get that quarterback situation taken care of.
yeah. All right. Well,
Okay.
I think you're through 8 here, I believe. So
Yep.
where are we going now?
Okay, we are going now to the Michigan schools.
Okay.
Western Michigan. We're gonna go
Okay.
start there. Western Michigan Broncos. Who is leaving Western Michigan this year? Wide receiver Leroy Thomas. Last year he had 35 receptions for 389 yards and 2 touchdowns. And defensive lineman Marshawn Nealand, he's also leaving Western Michigan. 57 tackles, 29 of them solos, 7.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. So that's the kind of productivity that Western Michigan is losing. And coming back to Western Michigan would be quarterback Hayden Wolf. He completed 148 of 226 for 1,505 yards, 8 touchdowns, and throwing only 5 interceptions. Also coming back is running back Jalen Buckley, 189 rushing attempts for 1,003 yards and 10 touchdowns. And on defense, coming back to Western Michigan is Tate Hollick. He had 75 tackles for 48 of them solos, 1.5 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, 4 pass deflections, and 1 forced fumble. So that is Western Michigan.
All right. I like the last 2 teams you hit. I'm not a MAC guy, but I like both Northern Illinois and Western Michigan, what they may have for the MAC here this year. So, and you just mentioned the players that are coming back with Western Michigan, quarterback, running back. That's very helpful when you can have that continuity of players. So are you sticking with the Michigan schools here, Steven? Or we?
Yes,
Okay.
I am.
All right. Where are we
Just
going
gonna
now?
go right through it.
Okay.
Central Michigan, the Chippewas. We're gonna go to them next. Leaving Central Michigan would be quarterback Jace Bauer. He completed 163 of 287 for 1,881 yards, 12 touchdowns, throwing 8 interceptions. That's quite big productivity they're losing there. And wide receiver Thomas Panunzio, he just graduated. So that's who they're losing on offense, those kinds of players. And defensively, they're losing defensive lineman Jacques Bristol. He had 44 tackles for 18 of them solos, 8 tackles for losses and 4 sacks, and also losing linebacker Nick Apsey and safety Trey Jones. Apsey had 17 tackles, and Trey Jones, he had 66 tackles, 37 solos, 1 interception. So that's the kind of productivity that they've lost at Central Michigan. Coming back to Central Michigan this year would be wide receiver Tyson Davis, who had 29 receptions for 444 yards, 4 touchdowns. And coming back on defense would be defensive lineman Jason Williams, who had 36 tackles last year, 13 of them solos, 2.5 tackles for losses, and 1 sack. Yep.
Hey, real quick on Central Michigan, Jim McElwain is still there, correct? Is the head coach?
Yes, he
Do
is
you-
still the head coach.
So if I remember, I think he's been there at least 4 seasons now or so.
Jim McElwain, this is his 6th year.
Okay,
He's going
6
to 6th year. Yeah.
Do you see? I mean, does he need to be competitive in the MAC? Is he on any kind of hot seat, or is he good to go? What are your thoughts on that? Just a quick thought.
To be honest with you, Steve, I would lean towards Jim McElwain just being okay. I don't think he's going to be on any hot seat right now. I mean, certainly Central Michigan could and should be improving as time goes on, but I don't see Jim McElwain being in any danger of losing his job right now. So, if anything, as we'll go on here, I actually expect Central Michigan to take a step up this year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Good for them. So let's hit the last of the Michigan schools of the trifecta. I believe it's Eastern is left. Is that right?
Directional
Yes.
Michigan.
Yes.
Yep. We started out west and we're going to finish east.
Okay.
Eastern Michigan, the Eagles. Yeah. Who are they losing? The key departures. They're losing quarterback, Eastern Michigan. They're losing quarterback, Austin Smith, 171 of 248 completions for 1,775 yards and 9 touchdowns, throwing 7 interceptions. And they're also losing running back Samson Evans, who is going to the NFL. Samson had 142 rushing attempts for 635 yards and 12 touchdowns. And also, let's see. Yeah, also, they're just going to be losing tight end Andreas Paskey. 2022, he had like 10 receptions for 206 yards and 2 touchdowns. Did not see much playing time last year, but he was productive when he was with Eastern Michigan, so they're losing him too. And defensively, they're losing Micah Coleman, 38 tackles, 14 of them solos, 6.5 tackles for loss, and 4.5 sacks. And linebacker Joe Sparicio, 137 tackles, 63 solos, 7.5 tackles for losses, and 2.5 sacks. That in particular, Joe Sparicio, his stats just flew out at me.
Mhm.
So when I see, Eastern Michigan losing that kind of productivity on defense, I'm like, wow, that's going to hurt. That's really going to hurt for Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, for sure. You would guess they're probably in the bottom half of the MAC this year.
Oh, yeah.
Losing some of that productivity for sure.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Okay.
And returning to Eastern Michigan would be quarterback Jeremiah Salem and running back Dante McMillan. So we'll just have to see how they develop as time goes on here for Eastern Michigan. I do consider Eastern Michigan to be that tough, gritty kind of team, middle of the pack, but still fighting their way up to the top.
Sure.
Kent State.
Yes.
Kent State Golden Flashes. Now, I think Kent State fans are not going to be so happy when they see my final predictions about them, but not intentional, but it's just, Kent State. I've been seeing Kent State games lately, and I don't see much of an identity for Kent State. But as far as talent goes, they've lost wide receiver Luke Flourier, who had 39 receptions for 413 yards and 4 touchdowns last year. And also losing on defense, defensive back Bryce Shepard, who had 79 tackles, 55 solos, 1 tackle for loss, 1 interception, and 7 pass deflections. And they're also losing defensive lineman CJ West, who is transferring to Indiana. And CJ West, he had 40 tackles, 20 of them solos, 7 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. With that said, though, Kent State, they are bringing back quite a bit of players, such as quarterback Michael Aliimo, who completed 79 of 144 for 932 yards, 2 touchdowns, and throwing 4 interceptions, and also quarterback Tommy Ulatowski, who completed 60 of 121 for 737 yards, 7 touchdowns, and threw 2 interceptions. I'm assuming there's going to be a quarterback battle there for Kent State, since they're both coming back.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll just see how that turns out with the quarterback battle. And also coming back to Kent State is running back Gavin Garcia. He had 138 rushing attempts for 594 yards and 2 touchdowns. And also wide receiver Krishan McCray, he's coming back. 41 receptions, 610 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And on defense, one notable player on defense coming back for Kent State is Nick Jacalone. 54 tackles, 29 of them solos, 4.5 tackles for loss, 1 interception, and 1 pass deflection. So that's Kent State.
All right. Well, the only comment I have, it's not about Kent State next year. It's about Kent State 2 years ago, or 2 and 3 years ago, because Lewis, who's now the head coach at San Diego State, and has, he's now running the Aztec Fast. I think when he was in Kent State, what was it, Flash Fast or something like that. And you mentioned Cooper earlier, who was with Ball State last year, was actually with Kent State before that. He was with Lewis. Well, they both went to San Diego State. Well, Lewis did, and he obviously pulled Cooper along. Really anxious to see how Lewis can make his offense work in potentially the Mountain West and with San Diego State, a team that did not have a great offense the past few years under Brady Hoke. Any comments on that, Steven? Just wanted to, pick your brain on Lewis and him being in San Diego State and what he was able to do there with Kent State a few years ago.
I can tell that Kent State, they're missing a guy like Lewis, because I'm really not trying to knock on Kent State. It's just that I don't feel like they have that identity set up for their team, either offensively or defensively. Now, Kenny Burns, he's going into his 2nd year as the head coach of the Kent State Golden Flashes. And back to Steve's point about Jim McElwain being on the hot seat. If Kent State doesn't do well again this year, I wouldn't be surprised if Kenny Burns might be on the hot seat after his 2nd year. I'm just honest take there.
Yeah. Well, it's put up or shut up usually. So
yeah.
Anyway, Steven, hey, we thank you so much for giving us the rundown of the MAC. I love to hear who you think is going to be in the MAC championship game. Remember, it is Miami of Ohio and Toledo.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see Toledo this year. I kept hearing from people that they lost a lot, whatever.
Yeah.
But now from what Steven has said, I'm really interested to see how Toledo's going to do in the MAC this year.
For sure. Yeah. Well, Steven, again, hey, we thank you for coming on, and we thank you for being one of the best mountain dwellers we have here on the Big Mountain, sir.
Yes. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to be here with you guys again tonight. And yeah, sorry about my video cutting out. I don't know what happened there, but just yeah.
Hey, we make it work. It'll be good.
Yeah.
We're
good though.
We'll throw your mug shot up there.
That's right.
It's okay. Yeah.
Hey, with that, we thank Steven for joining us here again. Okay. And hey, we want to thank you guys for watching this. This was the MAC preview. We will be doing a Mountain West preview. We'll be doing a Big Ten preview here in the coming days, as well as we gear up for the 2024 college football season. Just as a reminder, we do picks, predictions for every Mountain West and Big Ten game throughout the season. We're going to be doing live episodes Wednesday evenings. Would love to have you join us. With that, hey, make sure you give this one a like, subscribe if you like our content. We'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.
It's Maction time.